Early this week, the Commission on Local Government Modernization from Onondaga County released its preliminary report. Can you tell us how the idea for consensus originated, Joe?
Sure. Well, Consensus was created in 2014 out of a partnership that included the City of Syracuse, Onondaga County government, Syracuse 2020, the League of Women Voters, the Onondaga Citizens League, and the support of that region's delegation to the New York State Legislature. And the commission itself is a 19-member body that was appointed in early 2014, and with three key objectives. The first was to review the number and types of local governments within Onondaga County. Secondly, to evaluate the nature and extent of the services that they deliver. And then thirdly, and this is really the most important from an action step standpoint, identify and put forward specific opportunities to restructure the region's local governments in ways that promote improved effectiveness, efficiency, and competitiveness. And our team at CGR was engaged by the Commission in the summer of 2015, and we have since helped to lead the Commission through a two-phase process, a baseline phase where we evaluated existing conditions, and now as we move into an options phase. The baseline phase looked at over $1.7 billion in local government spending that takes place every year in Onondaga County. This is the equivalent of about 6% of that region's GDP. There are 36 local governments in the region, 37 different permutations of local government in the region, and a number of common service providers that cover different parts of the region, and services like public works and police and courts and tax assessment. So we're now at a point where we're moving into the preliminary recommendations.
Could you share with us some of those key recommendations?
So the preliminary committee recommendations, these are not recommendations the full commission has voted on yet, and they won't until later in the spring, and I'll get into that in a moment. The preliminary recommendations really span a whole range of potential reforms. At one level, the service level, there are recommendations to better coordinate the delivery of public works services, to capitalize on similarities in the types and levels of service that are currently delivered across independent municipalities. There are concepts that would improve the quality of the services that get delivered in areas like public safety, especially in the outlying parts of the county. These are city, town, village, town, village types of collaborations. At the other end of the continuum, though, are broader ideas, broader recommendations around modernizing the ways in which that region governs and delivers services that have truly regional importance. So, for example, the creation of a metropolitan council type entity modeled on the Metropolitan Council in the Twin Cities region in Minnesota, in Minneapolis and St. Paul, that's been so successful there, to administer regional infrastructure and land use in a regional way. The second broad recommendation involves the creation of a Metropolitan Development Fund, which would reduce this economic imperative that communities in the region have today to compete against one another for economic growth, and position that region to truly compete as an entire region. And then thirdly, the creation of a new city-county governance framework that capitalizes on the scale and service similarities of the region's two largest local governments, the City of Syracuse and the County of Onondaga. So in total, we're talking about more than 50 preliminary recommendations in this report that span all types and levels of government in the community.
What is the next step for consensus?
So the next step is public engagement, comprehensive and robust public engagement. The Commission is going to launch a series of public forums throughout the county, reaching out to residents and stakeholders to gather their reaction and input. What do they like? What do they not like? What stones weren't turned over, and so on. Given the magnitude of the project and the preliminary recommendations, there's no substitute for having a really vibrant community regional dialogue on not only on these issues, but the recommendations that are contained within the report. And the Commission is firmly committed to doing that. And then later in the spring, the Commission will gather all that feedback, revisit these preliminary committee recommendations, before taking a final series of votes and issuing a final recommendations report. That will likely happen in the April or May timeframe.